Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Cowboys Beat podcast for May 24th, 2024. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Kyle Brandt's rant about Dak Prescott. We're also going to be talking about Micah Parsons not being at OTAs. And we're also going to be talking about some news coming out of OTAs so far throughout the sessions that they've had. Before we get into the video, please make sure to like this video. I'd greatly appreciate that. It helps the channel immensely. And also make sure to subscribe as well. I would appreciate that as well. The subscriber count and the view count have been going up recently, and I greatly appreciate the support you guys have been giving me. It really does mean a lot to me. So I know this is my second podcast of the week. I don't know if I'm going to be dropping 2 podcasts a week throughout the course of the off season like I did this week. The only reason why I'm dropping another podcast this week is because, one, this Kyle Brandt rant on Dak Prescott is making waves within the community, and I do want to comment on it. And 2, the conference finals are on right now in the NBA, and I've been wanting to watch them. There's some really interesting matchups, but now with the way the Knicks and Pacers series go, I wish I would have probably went live either yesterday or Tuesday when those games went on, even though Tuesday's game was pretty good. But, I've been wanting to watch the conference finals, and that's why I haven't really went live this week. So expect more live streams next week. But in the meantime, I'm rolling with the more podcasts this week than maybe I would throughout the course of the offseason. Maybe during the season, I'll drop 2 podcasts a week. But without further ado, let's get into the episode. So let's get into Kyle Brandt's rant about Dak Prescott saying he doesn't play football for money. I will start off by saying this. There is one thing that I do agree with in this particular rant, but there is a lot of fluff in this rant, and quite honestly, he flat out lied in this rant as well. So we'll get into that, but here's the sound from that particular rant.
It says he doesn't play for money. Okay. Well then, Dak, don't play for money then. Don't. You have a perfect opportunity right in front of you. You have 1 year left as a Dallas Cowboy. Play out this year in your contract, and then go to your agent and say, I want to stay a Cowboy. I want to be a Cowboy for life, and I want to be a Cowboy for way less money. Give me the Brady deal. Give me the discount deal. In fact, give me half of that. In fact, give me the veteran minimum. That's what I'll play for, because I don't play for money. And your agent's going to freak out. Your agent's going to try to talk you out of it because that's your agent's job. You say, no. This is my life. This is my career. This is my money. I have generational wealth. I have huge endorsements pouring money coming in. And the second I'm done playing, I'm going to get a massive media deal because I'm a Cowboy and that's what we do. Go make it happen. And then after you hang up with your agent, you go upstairs where the Jones boys work and you say, listen to me. I'm giving you this money, not to sit on, not to throw away, to go and get me teammates, go and get me better players, to go and spend in free agency, to go even halfway all in, and to do it with my chips. They're mine. I'm giving them to you. I'm pushing my stack over to your chair so you can spend them on better players that we can win with. Because I think Dak's looking around. He doesn't know how much time he has left. This might be his last year as a Cowboy. And I wonder if he's thinking, what have I accomplished? What have I left here? What is my legacy as a Dallas Cowboys quarterback? I was watching on ESPN this morning, and they were showing a stat of Dak Prescott led the NFL in touchdown passes last year. Who cares? What a meaningless, pointless, forgettable stat that is in comparison to anything accomplished in the postseason, in the playoffs. Because Dak's in a club that I'm sure he knows he's in, of guys who make that much money. To get into that room, that double VIP room in the club, I mean, those are Super Bowl winners, at least people who have appeared in a Super Bowl. Bare minimum to get past that velvet rope, you got to appear in a title game. He has not. It's him and Kirk Cousins, the only guys who haven't. And I'm sure Kirk Cousins doesn't walk around saying, I don't play for money. You do play for money, Dak, and that's okay. People should play for money, but don't tell us you don't. And if you don't, then go prove it. Don't play for money. I dare you, but you do.
You want to know the worst part about that? I filmed my reaction to that, and I didn't even realize that I didn't record it, so I had to go back and watch it again, and I think I got even more pissed off than I already was. Look, he's not wrong when he says, hey, if you take a pay cut, make sure that the front office uses that money to go spend on free agency. However, that's like one thing that he said that's right in like a hypothetical situation to where if he was to take a pay cut, hey, go spend it on free agents. But there are a lot of There's a lot of bullshit in this. I'm going to be honest with you. First off, there's nothing that pisses me off more than when people are checking other people's pockets, right? I don't think Kyle Brandt's checking Josh Allen's pockets. I don't think he's checking other quarterbacks' pockets. Did you hear him? He listed off all the money that he makes with the contracts, with the endorsements, with the potential money that he can make after his career. You see him listing all this stuff up, bro. That's not your business. None of that is your business. Okay? Why are you checking people's pockets? And at the same time, let me just say this. Kyle Brandt is a fucking liar. He is. When he sits up there and says, oh, well, the only quarterbacks that get paid that type of money that haven't made a conference championship are Dak and Kirk Cousins. Well, that's a lie because Deshaun Watson reset the market with his contract, never made a conference championship. Kyler Murray reset the market with his contract, never made a conference championship. Justin Herbert reset the market with his contract, never got to a conference championship. And as a matter of fact, 2 of those 3 quarterbacks have never even played in a divisional round playoff game. Okay? And he says, oh, well, at least get to the conference championship game. Oh, Josh Allen has been there one time. You want to know how many points he scored in that game in which they got to the conference championship? They scored 17 points. The defense let up 3 points against Baltimore. Lamar Jackson was horrible in that game. And while we're on the topic of Lamar Jackson, he got to a conference championship. But guess what? He played the Houston Texans, who scored 10 points that game. And as a matter of fact, offensively, the Texans scored 3 points. And Lamar was horrible in the first half of that game. The defense kept them in that game. And then Lamar Jackson turned it on in the second half of that game. And they ended up playing really good football. And they got to the conference championship game. Okay, so well, you got to get to the conference championship or, you can't get paid big money. Like, that's a lie. He's not the only person who hasn't been to a conference championship who got paid big money. And he's trying to perpetuate this narrative of, well, Dak is just Kirk Cousins. First off, if Kirk Cousins had Dak's mobility, he'd be a borderline elite quarterback. But he's not as mobile as Dak Prescott, so he's not on that level. We don't think of him in that terms because he is limited when it comes to his athletic ability. Dak doesn't have those limitations when it comes to his athletic ability. He's a very impressive athlete at the quarterback position. He's able to use his legs to extend plays, to make plays, okay? So because of that, yes, that's why we think of Dak in a much greater light because Dak is a better pocket passer than Kirk Cousins on top of the fact that he is so great out of structure. Okay, Kirk Cousins is a really solid quarterback. The disrespect that he gets is ridiculous. I don't like it at all. But he did this, oh, well, yeah, Dak and Kirk Cousins are the only ones that haven't done it. Again, that's a lie. That's a flat out lie. And you're doing this in a rant where you're trying to make a point. Okay, Dak Prescott said, I don't play for money. It's literally the most generic football quote ever. I bet you if you wanted to look into it, there are plenty of players that said that. And yes, maybe his key motivation isn't the money to play football. Maybe he actually loves to play the game of football because when you start off playing a sport, you don't start off playing for money. You start off playing because you love the game. And what he was trying to say here is like, hey, look, I let my agent deal with that. And another thing to take into account when it comes to this, you do understand, like, I don't think people understand, and this isn't even like a one of those things where it's like, you don't understand football. No, like, you don't understand how certain things work, right? He is in a union. He is a unionized employee. The NFL Players Association is a union. Okay, so when you're a quarterback that's as good as Dak Prescott, that has the ability to reset the market, because if he doesn't reset the market in Dallas, he's going to go do it somewhere else. You reset the market for the next guy. That's how this works. You're not just resetting the market for yourself. You're resetting the market for the next guy. This is a union. Okay, these owners do not care about these players. They do not. Okay, so this whole thing where all these analysts and all these fans are taking the Joneses side of this, it's really ridiculous in this certain aspect. It really is. I mean, Dak Prescott has done a lot for this organization. You could talk about, oh, well, he hasn't gotten to a conference championship game. Okay, at the same time, this team has neglected to address certain areas of this football team because they're comfortable with their roster because of how damn good their quarterback is. Dak was the reason why this team won a lot of games this year. They don't defend the run well. Okay, they don't run the ball well. So what does that mean? If they're not passing at a very high level, they're not going to win football games. And you saw that over the course of this season. So this rant that Kyle Brandt went on, I look, there's going to be some fans of this team that love that rant because they hate Dak Prescott and they hate the fact that he's trying to get paid as much as he possibly can. Guess what? That's called leverage. But at the same time, I don't want to stray away from the point of, don't tell me Dak Prescott doesn't get covered differently than other athletes. He does, and it's fine to admit that. I mean, this is a guy who got misquoted for saying, we're not going to have tipped interceptions this year. And they spun it into a quote from him saying, I'm not going to have 10 interceptions. By the way, both of those things were true. They didn't have tipped interceptions this past season. So when Dak said that, he was right for saying that. But even with the misquote, Dak didn't have 10 interceptions. The thing with Trayvon Diggs, that is just team trash talk. It happens. It's the heat of competition. And yet it got made into a big story. This got made into a big story for no reason. It's quarterback speak. That's all it is. Like, I wish he wouldn't have said it? Like, yeah, now looking back on it, I wish he just wouldn't have said that. Like, because yes, he does play for money. But I don't think people should be going as hard on him for this quote. Because you had Jalen Hurts last year who said, money is nice, but championships are better. Something along the lines of what Dak Prescott said. But I guess because he put it in a quote that you can put in on Instagram and all that, oh, well, we love Jalen Hurts. We love this. But since it's Dak Prescott, it's, oh, you're a piece of shit. You got to get to the conference championship game. It's just funny with the vitriol in Kyle Brandt's voice there. You could tell that there is definitely something that he doesn't like about Dak Prescott. And we've seen this in some of his rants over the years about Dak Prescott, which, I mean, he doesn't like the player. It's fine. It is what it is. But I just wish he would act like he's not objective. Or did I say that right? Yeah, don't tell me that you're objective when you're talking about Dak Prescott, because the vitriol in your voice told me that you're not. So this was a bullshit rant. He wasted his time with this, and he made himself look like an idiot. And, here's the thing, right? I truly do not believe Kyle Brandt knows football. Like, when I see him, I turn off the TV because I'm not gaining knowledge when I hear him talk. Like, I'm not a Louis Riddick or Dan Orlovsky fan, but one thing I will know is this. I think those guys know football. I respect their knowledge of the game. I don't think Kyle Brandt knows football, and I don't respect him as a commentator. I don't have a lot of respect for Louis Riddick or Dan Orlovsky as commentators, but I respect their knowledge of the game of football. This guy, nope. What a joke, man. So there's probably going to be a lot of people that enjoyed what I had to say about Kyle Brandt, but there's going to be a lot of people that don't like what I have to say about Micah Parsons, but that's completely fine. It is what it is. I feel like it is an obligation as a content creator. Let me correct that. As a fan who creates content, because I'm a fan first, I'm going to tell everybody that as long as I do this, I am a fan. I feel like it is my obligation to be honest with you guys. And honestly speaking, I don't like what Micah Parsons did here. And what did Micah Parsons do? Micah Parsons did not report for the first week of OTAs. He's going to be there in the second week. Okay, I get it. He's training individually. That's the reason why he's not at these OTAs. I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, if you're going to come out and tell the fans that this team needs better leaders on the team, don't also, in the same instance, not show up to the first day of OTAs. I don't like that at all. What is the difference between you training individually that extra week? What is that going to do? And being there at I think you're going to have a greater impact if you show up for the first day of OTAs. And here's the thing. Let me just start off by saying this. There is a difference between being the best player and being the leader. Okay? Micah Parsons, to me, is not a leader, but he is, from a talent perspective, the best player on this football team. I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. If you just want to be a great player, go be a great player. You don't need to be a leader. There are other players on this team that can be leaders. DeMarcus Lawrence can be a leader. Trayvon Diggs can be a leader. Okay? Donovan Wilson is a guy who could be a leader, even though, he seems a little more quiet. But the way he plays, guys can get behind that, right? You don't need to go out there and be a rah-rah type of leader. And if you don't want to fulfill that role, that's fine. But don't sit up there on your podcast and say that this team needs better leaders and saying that you want to take more responsibility as a leader on this team and then not show up for the first day of OTAs when you're installing a new defense. And also, there are a lot of people missing this practice on the defense. There's a lot of people out for OTAs on the defense because they're injured or they didn't attend or whatever it may be. Okay? You need to be there. I don't like this one bit. I don't like it at all. There are other players that train individually as well. And this is where I come from when I criticize Micah Parsons, right? There are some things that he does that rubs me the wrong way. And I feel like when somebody like me says that, people come out and say, oh, well, you're just being a shill for the front office. You're just perpetuating their narrative about Micah Parsons not being a grown-up and that he has to mature. And all. Like, no, I'm not saying that, okay? I believe in Micah Parsons. I am a fan of Micah Parsons. But at the same time, there's some things that rub me the wrong way. You know, when we talk about the situation with Skip Bayless, right? I don't like Skip Bayless either, okay? But I'm also somebody that if I make an obligation to somebody and I agree to something, I'm going to fulfill that obligation. And when he came out and said, after, you know, he decided to flake on Undisputed, he said during his availability with the press, he said, hey, the reason why I did it is because, you know, Dak got hurt and we needed a leader in the locker room. Okay, which is kind of funny because he wasn't at the first week of OTAs, but I mean, it is what it is. But he comes out and says, we need a leader. Dak's not around. Okay. I have love for Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. That's what he said. And then he came out a year and a half later when Skip Bayless criticized him for his playoff performance. And he said, this is the reason why I didn't do your show, because I don't rock with you. He used another word, but he said, I don't rock with you, right? Okay, so you lied twice in that interview when you said you didn't do Undisputed because you wanted to be a better leader. You literally said, I didn't do Undisputed because I didn't rock with you. That's what you said a year and a half later. So you said that you rocked with Skip and Shannon in that interview. That's a lie. And you said you didn't do it because you wanted to be a better leader in the locker room. Well, it looks like that's a lie. So you got caught in a lie twice. That rubs me the wrong way. And I get it. It's Skip Bayless. It's funny. He flaked on Skip Bayless. F Skip Bayless. I don't look at it like that. You make an obligation, you fulfill that obligation. Okay? I'm not a 13-year-old kid who doesn't have morals. All right? I'm a 27-year-old man who has a job, who has a whole retirement plan, who understands that if I make an obligation, I have to fulfill that obligation, especially when it's a professional obligation. Okay? I mean, look, it would have been, what, a 10-minute spot? You don't have 10 minutes of your day to go do it? I don't understand. Or just don't make the obligation in the first place. Yeah, that is what it is. But then, like, he goes out a year later. No, I'm sorry, not a year later. He goes on his podcast after the Green Bay game, and he says, oh, well, I mean, there's personnel packages where I play linebacker. They just weren't called. Put that where you want to put it. Those were his words. Put that where you want to put it. Okay, so the personnel packages weren't called. Who's that on? That's on the play caller. But, oh, wait, like a week and a half later, or a week and a half earlier, you said, oh, well, you know, wherever Dan Quinn goes, I might follow him because you had that much respect for Dan Quinn. And then a week and a half later, you're saying, oh, well, you know, the personnel packages didn't get called. So that's the reason why, you know, put that where you want to put it. Okay, so I'm going to put that on your play caller. That rubbed me the wrong way. You know, him not taking media availability after the Giants game where he doesn't record a single stat, even though the defense played at a really high level that game, that rubs me the wrong way. And I'm sorry, like, I'm allowed to feel like this while also saying, like, I'm not a front office shill, but some of the people within the organization that have questions about Micah Parsons' maturity, I'm not going to sit up here and say that they're wrong for thinking that. It is what it is. He needs to grow up. And again, I'm going to say this again. You don't have to be a shill for the front office to see this. I'm critical of the front office. I give the front office their credit when I think it's due, but I'm criticizing them about all these negotiations that they're failing on right now. But I think they're right in this certain instance. Micah Parsons needs to grow up a little bit. He needs, you know, if he's going to say that he wants to be a better leader, again, That's fine. Go be a better leader. But if you're not going to fulfill that promise of being a better leader, then don't go out and say that. Don't go out and say that. I mean, look, maybe people have to go through the interviews to, see this with certain players. How many times have players come out and said, oh man, Micah's a great leader, man? I don't hear that. I hear it about Dak all the time, but I don't hear it about Micah. Maybe people are saying that. Maybe players on the team are saying that Micah Parsons is a great leader. But when they talk about Micah Parsons, they're usually talking about his talent. And this is one thing that I want people to understand. When I criticize Micah Parsons for and not just me, but bigger personalities in general, like when they criticize Micah Parsons, it's a compliment to him. And this is what I mean by that. Micah Parsons is in rarefied air. He is a transcendent talent, but he's not a transcendent player. He didn't make first team All-Pro this year, okay? Transcendent players make first team All-Pro. Myles Garrett is always making first team All-Pro. But I would say this, Micah Parsons is a more talented overall football player than Myles Garrett. But he's not making first team All-Pros like Myles Garrett. He's not winning Defensive Player of the Year like a Nick Bosa, even though he's more talented than Nick Bosa. Like, when I criticize Micah Parsons, it's not because I don't think he's great. I think he's great. I think he's the most talented football player in the NFL. I think he's one of the most talented defensive players that have ever played the game. So when I'm criticizing him, I'm literally giving him the props for his talent. When I saw him his rookie season and I saw him go up to Kansas City and take over that game, the offense did not play well that game, but Micah Parsons was the reason why that team was in the game, because he took over the game. I gave him props for that. I saw a player that I said, man, this guy could be the best player in the NFL one day, but he's not that right now. He's not the best player in the NFL. And the fact that I think that he's gotten worse year after year after year, I'm not saying that he's bad by any means, but I'm just saying when you look at Micah Parsons' 3 seasons, you're not telling me that his rookie season wasn't his best season. He did not build upon that. He did not improve from that rookie season. Or at least Dan Quinn didn't use him properly to the point where it's like, all right, we're going to use you as a chess piece like we did your rookie season. You know, he didn't do that. But again, I'm not going to blame Dan Quinn for everything with this defense and everything with Micah Parsons. Like, he has to take accountability as well. Okay? Like, when I see here's the thing. When I see certain people with the type of talent that Micah Parsons possesses, transcendent talent, I'm going to be more critical to them if they're not living up to that potential, right? People say this on my TikTok page. You're always making excuses for Dak. You know, it's funny how you criticize Micah more than you criticize Dak. Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick. Talent-wise, there is a ceiling for Dak Prescott that he has reached. And not only reached the ceiling, he has raised his ceiling. He's getting everything out of his talent that he can. Okay? Dak Prescott is not nearly as talented as Micah Parsons. CeeDee Lamb, another guy. I give him all the props in the world because he is raising his ceiling. Tyler Smith, he's raising his ceiling. These guys are raising their ceilings. Trayvon Diggs, they're raising their ceilings. Micah Parsons is not hitting his ceiling. Micah Parsons should be the best defensive player in football. He should be looked at as the 2nd best player in football outside of Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes has a Super Bowl, has all the Super Bowls. He should be a perennial first-team All-Pro guy. He should be a guy that we look at and say, okay, he's one of the best defensive players to ever play the game, not just an elite player within his era, which right now he is an elite player within his era. That's great. I like that. I love that. I love having elite players on my football team. But when you're not reaching your ceiling, I'm going to criticize you for it, right? You know, and it's not just in football. There's other sports where guys are not hitting their ceilings. Ben Simmons had a tremendous ceiling. Even when he was playing good basketball, I still criticize him because I'm like, you're way more talented than what you're showing. Now, obviously, we ended up seeing what Ben Simmons was. Like in the music industry, Chris Brown. Chris Brown to me is as talented as Michael Jackson was, but he's not nearly the artist that Michael Jackson was. He did not reach that ceiling that he had. I just think as an overall performer, Chris Brown is a better overall performer than Michael Jackson. But Michael Jackson worked his tail off, which is why he's regarded as a way better artist. So when I have that type of view of you and you don't reach that type of ceiling, I'm going to criticize you for underachieving, even though still acknowledging, hey, you're great at what you do. You're elite. You're one of the best at what you do. But at the same time, you can be even better. Why strive to just be elite within your era? Strive to be an elite all-time player, which is what Micah Parsons is. He's one of the most talented defensive players that the league's ever seen. You can make an argument that he is the most talented defensive player that the league has ever seen. Just pure talent. I mean, this guy came in from Penn State not playing a year. I think it was his senior year. He didn't play his senior year, and he came into the league being one of the best pass rushers in the league, even though he wasn't that in college. He didn't play defensive end in college. I know he played it in high school, but he didn't play it in college. He was an off-ball linebacker, and he came in the league and rookie season, one of the best pass rushers in the game. To me, should have won Defensive Player of the Year his rookie season because of how much he elevated that defense. So this is not me saying Micah Parsons isn't that good. No, he's great. He's exceptional, but he's not reaching the type of caliber of player that he can be. And that's where I criticize him. That's why I hold him to a very high standard. And if you don't like that, I'm sorry. I'm not going to lower my expectation for a guy when I see the type of talent that Micah Parsons possesses. That is the greatest compliment you can give to somebody. Okay? So that's where I stand on the Micah Parsons side of things. He should be at OTAs. If you're going to say you want to be a better leader, then be a better leader. Be about it. Don't just talk about it. So the Cowboys are in their first week of OTAs here. I want to go over some notes from the great Patrick Nosey Walker at Voice of the Star on X. Make sure to go follow him. These notes are from him, not from me. I was not in attendance. Okay, so let's go over some of his notes on the offensive side of the ball. Zeke and Rico both get solid splits on first team. Okay, so here's my thing. I believe the Cowboys have a running back one in Rico Dowdle. I do. My problem with Rico Dowdle is not his talent. I think he's a running back one. That's the way I view him. My problem with him is his injury history. And that scares me. It does, right? But if this guy can stay healthy, this is a good running back. And I think he's a good number one running back if he could stay healthy. But, that is a big problem. Zeke getting solid splits on the first team, that doesn't surprise me at all. I think Zeke is probably going to lead this team in carries if the running back room is the way it is come week 1 of the season and he stays healthy. So that's where I stand with the running back room. I think they need to go add a guy. I do. I think they need to go trade for a guy. There's plenty of surplus out there at the running back position. I would be looking at teams like Chicago, Atlanta, and the New York Jets. I'd be looking at their running back situations and see if you could potentially swing and trade for some of the surplus that those teams have on their roster. BB Guyton with second team to begin OTAs. This is nothing to freak out about. It is May, okay? The Cowboys are one of these teams where it's like, oh, no, it doesn't matter that, you have high draft stock. We want you to go earn being on the first team. And I guess there's something to that. I would rather have Tyler Guyton with the first team if the ultimate goal is to play him with the first team over Chuma Edoga. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a competition. I think that Tyler Guyton is a better player than him day one. BB and Hoffman is a different story. This coaching staff loves Brock Hoffman. And Cooper Beebe is transitioning to guard. So I can see why he would be taking reps with the second team. Tyler Guyton, I don't understand that. I understand why they want to see a competition between Hoffman and Beebe because they think very highly of Brock Hoffman. He's a guy who apparently has been working his tail off. So I understand it from that perspective. Chuma Edoga has proven nothing. He is a below average tackle in this league, and not even just a below average starting tackle in this league, just below average in general, whether you want to talk about starters or backups. Okay. Edoga and Hoffman were with the first team. That kind of piggybacks off what we were saying with BB and Guyton being on the second team reps. I don't think it makes that much sense, to be honest with you. Again, I understand it from the Brock Hoffman perspective, but I did expect this. We've seen over the past few years, their first-round picks take second-team reps, even though ultimately they ended up becoming starters. Not Mozzie Smith per se, but, Tyler Smith and Micah Parsons all took second-team reps to start off OTAs and the early parts of, just the training period in the offseason. Turpin, first-team deep fade from Dak, complete. Okay, so Turpin is a guy that I'm very interested in just because I think that there are multiple dimensions to his game. I think you can use him as a receiver, and I also think you can use him in gadget situations, whether it be, running the football, jet sweeps, coming out of the backfield, using him on deep balls, all that type of stuff. I think that you can use Turpin in that manner. I'd like to see him get used a little more. When it comes to him being like wide receiver 3, I'm not necessarily for it. I view him more as like a gadget type of guy, which might seem like slander, but it is what it is. If he doesn't want me to look at him like that, he's got to play better. And Turpin he's played fine. He's a fine player, but that's just my opinion on that front. Turpin equals heavily targeted in 7-on-7s with Dak. Again, that's going to be something to look for. Somebody's got to make this jump into being wide receiver 3, right? Is it Jalen Tolbert? Is it Kevontae Turpin? Who's it going to be? Are they going to go get a guy and maybe he ends up being the wide receiver 3 for this football team? So I'm very interested to see how that pans out. Flournoy quickness in and out of breaks is lethal. Again, another guy that he has a little bit of a ceiling to him. This is a guy that the Cowboys looked at and said, hey, this guy could potentially be a good player. And maybe he steps up and he's the wide receiver 3. I think there's a few options here that the Cowboys have when it comes to filling that role. I would like for guys like Tolbert or Brooks or even Ryan Flournoy to fill that role instead of the Cowboys going out there and getting, let's just say, a guy like Michael Thomas, even though I wouldn't mind that. I'm just saying, I would prefer if one of these young guys stepped up and did that, maybe be a little more reliable than a Michael Thomas would be. Trey Lance had several well-placed throws and full-team reps, including in traffic over the middle that only Chrome's 5'11" was in position to elevate and grab completed. Here's the thing. There are no Cowboys fans that should be rooting against Trey Lance. Even if you're a huge Dak Prescott fan and you want Dak Prescott to be the quarterback of this team for the future, you should still want Trey Lance to go out there in preseason and turn heads. And the reason why I say that is this. If the Cowboys do come to an agreement on a contract with Dak Prescott before the season and Trey Lance goes out there and balls out, you want to know what that allows the Cowboys to do? It allows them to trade Trey Lance. Hey, maybe a team falls in love with his preseason tape and says, we'll give you a second-round pick for him. And then at that point, if the Cowboys ended up turning that fourth-round pick into a second-round pick, let's just say it's to a team like the Las Vegas Raiders or something, like a team that'll probably be drafting at the top half of the draft, and you can get a second-round pick for this guy. Now, you might have a situation where you have 3 picks within the top, 62 picks of the draft. Within the first 2 rounds, you could potentially have 3 picks. Or maybe you could get a first-round pick for the guy, in the later half of the draft. You never know. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you end up getting a first-round pick. But I'm just saying, speaking hypothetically in certain situations, maybe the league thinks highly of Trey Lance after this preseason run that he has. And I'm rooting for the guy. I like Trey Lance. I do. I didn't like the trade, and I'll continue to say that. I didn't like the trade. But if the Cowboys end up flipping it for a second-round pick, guess what? I will go out on Front Street on my TikTok where I heavily criticize the trade, and I'll say I'm wrong. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong in certain situations. Let's talk about the defense. Nealon won several reps versus the first-team offensive line. I'm a fan of Marshawn Nealon. I think year one, he's going to be able to contribute to this team. Do I think he's going to be like an impact player year one? I don't think that. That would be a little bit of a reach, but I think that he'll be able to contribute to this team. I think he will be a positive for this football team. And it is good to hear that he's winning against the first-team offensive line. But also at the same time, who's on the first-team offensive line? Again, who is he beating on the first-team offensive line? Is he beating Chuma Edoga? Like, that's something that we do have to take into consideration. Leofau rotating between first and second team. Maris Leofau is a guy who Mike Zimmer has a ton of respect for. This is a guy that I think is going to have a role day one for the Cowboys. He's going to be on the field for the Cowboys. This is a guy that could potentially be your Mike Backer of the future. That's why they drafted him, because he came in on the pre-draft visits and blew this team away. They have plans for him. They want to play this guy. So, we'll see what happens there. That's going to be an important pick to look at, because I don't think if Cooper Beebe doesn't turn out to be the player that we think he can be, I don't think people are going to get on the Cowboys for not drafting a running back in that spot because, hey, you drafted an offensive lineman that had some really damn good college tape. I don't think people are going to kill you for that. I don't think people are going to kill you for the Marshawn Nealon pick. He's a premium position guy. According to some people, you got good value for him. So I don't think people are going to kill you on that one. Maris Leofau is somebody that people looked at as kind of a reach. And you had running backs that you could draft in that spot. But I think the Cowboys had a higher grade on Leofau than they did all those other running backs. And, they wanted to take a swing at that. So that's going to be a pick to monitor. And, those scouts better hope that they were right about that. Kalen Carson's reps, all question mark, whereas a boundary corner. Okay, so Kalen Carson, I don't think he's going to be a slot guy in the NFL. I don't. I think he's probably going to be a guy that plays on the outside. And this could potentially be a good thing because then you could put Deron Bland in the slot. And, look, if this guy steps up, you're talking about Trayvon Diggs, Kalen Carson, and Deron Bland for however many years. We'll see what, Deron Bland demands with his upcoming contracts. I think he's 2 years away. I know he's eligible after this season, but, if this kid can step up and become a player in at least year two, your secondary is going to be looking very good, especially with the safeties that you have in terms of like Malik Hooker still playing at a high level. You have Marquise Bell. He's going to be going back to safety. Wanye Thomas. Donovan Wilson still has some time left here. Your secondary could be in a very good position if Kalen Carson turns out to be the player that some people believe he can be. So, these are all going to be things to look at. And I get it. It's OTAs. It's just, shorts and whatever people usually say about, the OTA session or the OTA part of the offseason. It's shorts and shoulder pads, so we'll have to wait and see what happens here. But, let's wait and see what happens when the pads come on. Let's wait and see what happens in preseason. It's great that, there's some good reports coming out of OTAs, but, it is May. And I want to see this translate to the field. I don't want to just hear great things when they're in shirts and shoulder pads. I want to hear this during the preseason. I want to hear this during the regular season. I want to hear great things about these players during the playoffs. So I get it. It's OTAs, but look, it's May. We have to talk about something, right? So shout out to Patrick No-C Walker, one of the best in the business. I truly respect that guy very much. Does an awesome job covering the team for DallasCowboys.com. So that's going to be it for the podcast, guys. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, listening. We're starting to increase these numbers big time. If you guys haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Talking about the numbers, I'm getting close to being monetized here. So, once we get monetized, the content's even going to be more aggressive. I'm going to be more aggressive when it comes to putting out content there. I try to get a video out every day, whether it be a clip from the podcast or a live stream or something along those lines. But I'm doing my best here, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it. So I will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you guys for tuning in.